Vidhammer Fantasy.
Welcome back to Vidhammer. I'm Spudlow, and in this video I'm going over the third round in the Learn2Play tournament in December of 2013. This is a new venue for me, and I had a lot of fun playing. This is a 2,500 point Blood and Glory engagement, where the game doesn't end when your army reaches its breakpoint, but instead, your opponent gets bonus points based on the turn in which he got your army to break. My list is gone over in the first round game, which I'll put a link up for. But for spells, my Grey Seer ends up with Death Frenzy, Plague, Pestilent Breath, and Skitter Leap, while my first Warlock Engineer ends up with Warp Lightning, and the second gets Howling Warp Gale. For his list, starting with his characters, he has a Tyrant with the Sword of Anti-Heroes, a Talisman of Preservation, and the other Trickster's Shard, a Slaughter Master with a Dispel Scroll, who ends up with the spells Toothcracker, Troll Guts, Bullgorger, and Spine Marrow, the exact same combination that Steve had in my second game. Then there's a Bruiser BSB with the Crown of Command. Then for his units, he has 11 Ogres, 5 Iron Guts, 4 Mournfang Cavalry, 2 units of 4 Lead Belchers, a Thunder Tusk, an Iron Blaster, and 1 single Saber Tusk. There isn't a lot of intervening terrain, so we end up with relatively tight-packed battle lines on each side, but I do end up putting my Warlord at the top of the line with the Rat Ogres, because it's close to a Nehekaran Sphinx, and I'm hoping to get a buff out of it. The Grey Seer and 1 Engineer go with my Clan Rats, while the other Engineer goes with the Slaves. He's got his Saber Tusk behind the Buried Column, and I finally put the Gutter Runners behind the top of his line. Now if I can just remember to move the darn things. I win the first turn roll, and start off moving the Abomination and Doomwheel forward on some wonderful distance rolls. Then my Warlord challenges the Sphinx and gets Heroic Killing Blow. A game-changing turn for that character. I only wish I'd changed my game to match it. I do 2 other start-of-game elements I had neglected. The Grey Seer gets 3 Warpstone tokens, and the Storm Vermin end up with Frenzy again. I think that's 3 in a row for both of these. The rest of my units make some little steps, but mainly just putting the chaff up a little. The first magic phase ends up 11 versus 6. I use my first 2 dice to put a wound on the Mournfang since the Saber Tusk is hidden. Then I use 2 more for Howling Warp Gale and fail. I only needed a 6 on 2 dice, so it was a calculated risk. Unfortunately, that leaves me with only a single die advantage, which, as my luck would have it, is enough for him to dispel my attempts at Death Frenzy and Plague. For shooting, I cap off the Doom Rocket at the Bulls for 2 wounds, plus 1 on the Manny. The Doom Wheel restrains from shooting the Rat Ogres, the Poison Wind Mortar shoots for the Mournfang, but misfires and can't shoot. The Warp Lightning Cannon follows suit and sticks in the ground in front of the Bulls. But the Gutter Runners do some good and manage to get 7 poison wounds out of 14 shots, and end up putting 4 wounds on the Iron Blaster. Over to the Ogres, the Mournfang charge the Clan Rats but come up just short on the distance. The rest of the line moves up with the lower half angling toward the bottom. Magic ends up 7 versus 6. He uses 6 dice for Troll Guts, but I manage to tie with my Dispel dice, and he rolls a 2 with his final die and moves us into shooting. The first unit of Lead Belchers takes out the Warp Fire Thrower, and the second kills off the Poison Wind Mortar, as the Iron Blaster takes out the Warp Lightning Cannon. It's nice when your shooting works well. Manny tries for the Hell Pit, but doesn't manage to wound as we head into the second turn. I have the Gutter Runners charge the Iron Blaster, so at least it won't be able to shoot in this turn. Then I charge in with the Storm Vermin and Rat Ogres as well. Charging the Storm Vermin in is certainly a big decision in this game. I could have moved the Slaves up to take the charge instead, and as I was making this battle report, that's the choice that I look at and said, yeah, that was a mistake. The Gutter Runners make it, the Rat Ogres come up short, and unfortunately the Storm Vermin make it as well. The Hell Pit makes the distance on the lower Lead Belchers, as the Doom Wheel pulls off another land speed record attempt, and ends up closer to the Rat Ogres once again. Magic ends up 10 versus 6. I start out with 3 dice for Warp Lightning on Manny for 1 wound, Then I roll 2 for Howling Warp Gale, and fail again. I guess I needed to roll 6 dice to get a 6, but if I had, I'm sure my caster would have been sucked in the void from the miscast. Since he has more dice and I don't want to risk a backlash, I go ahead and end my magic phase, and go for what's left of my shooting as the Doom Wheel lights up my own unit, but only manages a single wound on a Rat Ogre. For our first combat, the Hell Pit gets a couple of impact hits and 4 more in regular wounds, and gives himself a -1 to hit modifier. He takes 1 in return attacks, but wins by 5 and catches them in the flee, running past the Iron Guts as he goes. The Gutter Runners barely make their fear check and manage another 4 poison hits and take out the Iron Blaster. As a reward, I decide to offer them up to the Mournfang to prevent the charge next round. It's not that I'm heartless, I'm just Skaven at heart. Finally, in the big combat, he has his 3 characters step up to the front, and I quickly realize how this battle's going to go. With the Ogres in bus formation, he doesn't do as many attacks, and as I review the footage, I only gave myself a single supporting rank in my attacks for some reason. The front rank was frenzied, so it should have equaled the supporting attacks, but oh well. That's just a self-imposed increase in difficulty. I put some wounds on the characters and managed to take his Slaughtermaster down to 1, but I took 9 and I am no longer steadfast. I fail the break test and the unit manages to run away, but with the Standard Bearer and the BSB making their last stand, that's the breakpoints for my army. The game doesn't end, but the Ogres gain an extra 500 kill points for this game, putting me way behind the curve and not much left to punch with. Over to the Ogres, he has the Bulls and Iron Guts charge the Slaves. That's a bit one-sided. The Thunder Tusk charges the Hell Pit, and the Leadbelchers move up to redirect the Rat Ogres. Magic is 10 versus 5 this round. He uses the first 2 for Bull Gorger on the Bulls, which I let go since I already know how that combat ends. Unfortunately, he gains back a wound on his Slaughtermaster. Then 2 for Toothcracker on Manny, which I fail to dispel with 3 dice. Go me. He uses 3 dice for Spine Marrow on the Mournfang, which I don't really see them needing, and his last 3 go for Troll Guts on the Thunderdusk, which I dispel with a scroll because I want to win at least 1 combat this turn. The Leadbelchers put a wound on the Doom Wheel, and we move into combat. 1 wound gets past the Hell Pit's regen, then he flails his fists, but with his teeth cracked, he only manages 1 wound. I lose the combat, but the stubborn Hell Pit passes his break test. The Life of a Slave is a bit of a different story, though. They're made to be fed into the meat grinder, which is where they currently are. The Slaves use a lot of harsh language, but only inflict emotional wounds, while the Ogres let their weapons do the talking and kill off 23 slaves, but they end up just 2 shy of taking away that steadfast bonus, so they pass their break test with the help of that Warlock Engineer that no one decided to swing at. Lucky bastard. The Gutter Runners put up a single wound that gets saved, and I actually think they were staring at me with a puzzled look in their eye as they take 7 wounds. I was actually lucky that none of them made their 6+ ward save, because now he can only reform, so my Rat Ogres look good for the next turn. Back to me, I go ahead and have those Rat Ogres charge the Leadbelchers to get them out of the way, hoping to overrun into the Mournfang, and he chooses to flee. I'm close enough to the Mournfang so I don't worry too much about it until I fail the redirect roll, and I end up moving 3 inches. Then the Doom Wheel, which refuses to be outdone in the fail department, decides to move an amazing 4 inches, but at least it isn't closer to my own stinking units. Storm Vermin actually manage a rally here, and for a brief moment things don't look too impossible. Magic is 11 versus 6 this time, and I use the first 3 for Skitterleap. I don't think he knows what I have planned, but the cornered rat is the most dangerous, as they say. I place my Grey Seer to the Mournfang's flank, and go for Pestilent Breath, planning on shooting it into him, but he uses a scroll to dispel it. I use my last 4 for Plague on the Bulls and get Irresistible. The way my dice are going, that Grey Seer is going into the void, guaranteed. First, however, the Bulls take 5 wounds, and the Iron Guts pass all of theirs, and 16 slaves seriously end up questioning my leadership decisions. In the backlash, the Grey Seer cancels his trip to the Void and settles for losing a couple of spells. The Doom Wheel makes up for it in shooting and misfires, taking a wound and losing one of its movement dice for the rest of the game. In combat, the Many fails to wound, and my Hell Pit, which is the only thing on the board I still have faith in, manages to kill off the Thunder Tusk. The Slaves revert to obscene gestures and soiling themselves, but ultimately it's a lost cause. The Ogres turn to face the Storm Vermin, and at this point I seriously reconsider not reforming them to 5 wide when they rallied. It's relatively simple for the Ogre side. The Iron Guts and Bulls charge the Storm Vermin as the Mournfang charge the Doom Wheel. I try to flee with the Storm Vermin, hoping that I'll get a favorable distance and end up right next to the board edge but not over. But my luck just keeps getting better as I roll Snake Eyes. You know, XCOM on impossible difficulty isn't this hard. The Lead Belchers run another 5 inches and we bypass the magic phase, although we should have removed the spells from the previous turn. It wouldn't have made a big difference in the endgame though. For combat, the Doom Wheel manages to take out a single Mournfang before being dismantled by hooves. In our final turn, on a last-ditch effort, I have the Grey Seer charge the Lead Belchers, hoping that they'll run off the board. No such luck, of course, but at least the Rat Ogres finally managed to make it into combat by making an unfailable charge distance. The Hell Pit gives it a good chance, but too little too late. Magic ends up 10 versus 6 in another big roll, so I use 4 dice to attempt Death Frenzy on the Rat Ogres, since they have a few wounds to spare, but he dispels it. Then I use 2 for Skitter Leap, hoping to put the Grey Seer in breathing range of the Lead Belchers, which was a silly idea since it would be impossible to do more than 4 wounds. But that doesn't stop me from getting Irresistible Force on 2 dice. Fortunately, I'm close enough to actually catch 2 Ogres in my missed cast, and the Grey Seer dodges his 1 wound. But I also lose a single power die. With the last 3 dice, I try for Pestilent Breath, but roll horribly, and he's able to dispel it. For our final fight, where my Warlord with Heroic Killing Blow finally gets to swing at something, he manages only a single wound. But the Rat Ogres take them down to 1 model and the Warlord shrugs off the incoming hits. I win the combat and he fails the break test, which turns out okay since the Standard Bearer was the only one left, and I'm sure I wouldn't have caught them in a dead heat. Since no one can get into combat for the bottom of 4, we just have the Lead Belchers roll to rally so they can blow up that pesky Grey Seer. But I guess my dice luck finally rubbed off as they fail to rally and flee off the board. For the final tally, we ended up within 60 points, but with the extra 500 for the Ogres, he gets a decisive victory and a few scenario bonus points to go along with it. I lick my wounds and rethink some things, but all in all, it was a really fun tournament. Hope you like this battle report. Be sure and check back for more videos each week. Do me a favor and subscribe, like the video if you want to see more, and as always, send me a message if you have any tactics or matchups you'd like to see. Till next time from Vidhammer, keep fighting.